I'm just back from a long journey. I'm glad to be home, but I'm even more glad that I went. It's not the first time I have made the journey to Russia. Nearly 7 years ago, I was in Moscow. We were not at war then. The sky was not even overcast, but the clouds of war were beginning to gather on the distant horizon. You could just discern them. That was why I was in Moscow in 1935, talking with Mr. Stalin. I believed then, as I believe now, that there was no real conflict of interest between the Soviet Union and this country. We both said so in our communique at the time. I believed then, as I believe now, that despite the many obvious differences, our overriding purpose was the same. We both wished to maintain the peace. Well, we lost that peace, but we are determined not to lose this war or the peace that will follow it. And so I was glad of a chance to go again to Moscow, to speak again with Mr. Stalin. The Royal Navy carried us to our destination in North Russia with swift, quiet efficiency. They were wonderful hosts, but it was not an easy journey. We drove through heavy winter seas, and at one time, so they told us, we had tons of ice on board. I confess I was glad when we had rounded the North Cape and were sailing along the Murmansk coast. It was snowing hard in the dim half-light of the Arctic noon, where the sun never rises above the horizon in the winter months, when we landed on Soviet soil. A detachment of Russian soldiers were drawn up on the shore. They were a grand type of man, dressed in their warm sheepskin coats. A much more practical uniform, I can tell you, than the ersatz clothing and the sweepings of Goebbels' jumble sale, in which Hitler's armies have to retreat through the Russian snows. These Russian soldiers were flanked by officers carrying the Union Jack and the hammer and sickle. The yellow ochre of the uniforms, the bright splashes of color of the two flags against the snow-covered hills, the uncanny twilight at midday, the silence of falling snow, all these formed a most impressive setting for our first landing on Soviet soil. But it was friendly. Indeed, the courtesy and friendliness of this greeting was typical of our welcome at every stage of our journey. Flying conditions were very bad, so we traveled to Moscow by train. One stretch of our journey was over a section of the railway which Goebbels has often told you has been cut by enemy action. I can tell you from practical experience that Goebbels is wrong. The railway is intact, undamaged, and working smoothly and well.
Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday, January 4th, and here's the latest news. NBC reporters in London and Washington are standing by, and later we hope to contact our staff correspondent in the Dutch East Indies. First, however, we turn to Britain. Go ahead, London.
This is London. John McVane speaking. London today heard from Singapore that the British forces in northern Perak have fallen back again. The Japanese kept up their pressure during the night and followed the British closely. The British say they inflicted heavy casualties on the enemy. The Japanese yesterday made a landing at Weston in British North Borneo. Japanese ships off the west coast of Malaya were bombed last night, and 24 enemy planes raided Singapore. American and British planes based in Burma attacked a Japanese aerodrome in Siam. They shot down 2 fighters in the air and destroyed 4 planes on the ground. British bombers in Britain last night made another attack on the docks at Brest. where the Scharnhorst, Gneisenau, and Prinz Eugen are still held. Mr. Eden is expected to follow his radio talk today with an account to Parliament of what he saw and did in Russia. It isn't known how detailed an explanation he can give, because the Germans are probably even more eager than the British public to hear what Stalin and the British government decided. But members of Parliament will want to hear as much as possible about Russia's part in the Allied plans. The contacts between British and Russian fighting men and the visit of Russian trade union leaders to Britain are, like Mr. Eden's trip, evidence that relations between the two countries have changed a lot since last June. Whenever officers and men of the British and Russian navies and air forces have got together, they've worked on the basis of easy understanding. And it seems likely that when the Russian trade unionists finish their tour of British factories, they'll have some new ideas about what the people of this island are really like. The Colonel Blimps of the Munich era, with their ideas that hardly extended beyond their own club doors, have been submerged, or at least eclipsed, by the realization that Britain must depend on allies for her very existence. Russia and America, too, have their Colonel Blimps, although they don't call them that. And things like the 26-Power Declaration and the announcement of unified command in the Pacific are significant proof that their views don't matter so much anymore. But General Brownrigg, writing in the Sunday Dispatch today, points out that some of the old-fashioned Colonel Blimps still exist in Britain. He says he was surprised to meet some members of a London service club who criticized the British commando raid on Rommel's headquarters in Libya. The general said there was a shade of doubt as to whether this type of thing was quite according to the accepted rules of war. General Brownrigg says what has been done at Rommel's headquarters can be repeated elsewhere. The man at the helm of Germany may even feel that his own headquarters are not so safe as before. He may begin to wish that he hadn't started the game of playing rough. The British have been taught time after time the lesson that in any area of war, the side that has control of the air will win the battle. From France through the Battle of Britain and right down to Libya, the point has been proved and proved again. The fighting in Greece and Crete proved that when air control is opposed to sea control, air control will win. Some experts, like General de Gaulle, believe that the real success of an invasion across water lies in the air and not the sea. That's why recent invasion exercises to test the defenses of British aerodromes are worrying the press and public here. The exercises are said to have proved what a lot of people suspected, that aerodromes in Britain aren't heavily enough defended to hold out against an intensive attack. The protection of aerodromes has been a joint affair conducted by both the Army and the Air Force. For a long time, observers have demanded that one force or the other should take over the job of protecting the fields and do the job right. The fact that in the Far East the loss of key aerodromes has opened the door to enemy military victories is giving a new note of insistence, the demands for unified airfield defense. In Britain itself, there are so many airfields and Air Force units are so scattered that if the Germans did get a few of them in an invasion attempt, the loss might not be vital. But the British have seen how a toehold can develop into a foothold, and the prospect isn't a pleasing one. Some people here are beginning to feel that as the marshalling of the Allied forces increases the probability of Axis defeat, so does it increase the possibility that Hitler may make a neck-or-nothing attempt to conquer the British Isles. Major Oliver Stewart, the Sunday Observer's air expert, warns that most people in Britain don't bother to carry their gas masks around these days. And he says rumors have come in the assembly of large quantities of gas bombs for the Germans. It would be appalling if at this stage of the war we were again to be surprised by the ruthlessness and treachery of the enemy. This is John McVane in London, returning to the National Broadcasting Company in New York.
And from our New York newsroom, here's a bulletin with the date marked Cairo, Egypt. British headquarters today raised its estimate of the number of Axis prisoners taken in the fall of Bardia to 7,000, of whom 1,000 were said to be German. Clearing of the battlefield is continuing, a communiqué said, indicating that the final total might be still higher. Earlier estimates had placed the number of prisoners taken in the Bardia zone at about 5,000. Advanced British units operating in the Agagdabia zone, more than 300 miles to the west, were reported harassing German and Italian forces trying to make a stand there. And now for news from the other side of the world, we take you now to San Francisco.
From the San Francisco newsroom, we take you now to Batavia.
Hello, NBC. This is Sidney Albright speaking in Batavia, Java. Time is 9:36 Sunday evening. Today's most important piece of news in the Netherlands East Indies is the appointment of General Wavell as Commander-in-Chief of all Allied forces in the Far Eastern area. General Wavell is known here and is highly respected as a military leader, entirely capable of assuming command of the Allied operations. Like General Wavell, Admiral Thomas C. Hart, Commander-in-Chief of the United States Asiatic Fleet, is also well known to the people of this country. Only a short time before the Japanese launched their attack on the Philippines, the Royal Netherlands Navy, CNC, visited Admiral Hart in Manila. The head of the Indies Army, General H. Terporton, was conferring in Manila with General MacArthur and Admiral Hart when his predecessor, General Berescott, was killed in a plane crash in Batavia. At that time, Terporton was Chief of Staff. It will be recalled that the Dutch are, to a great extent, responsible for the continued efforts towards the formation of a solid ABCD bloc, which they had advocated long before the trend of events in the Pacific reached the showdown stage. Consequently, it is easy to understand the enthusiasm in local quarters for what is actually the fulfillment of their own hopes. It is pointed out that in this case, the democracies did not wait too long to act, which is a favorable indication that future emergencies will be handled with the same promptness, a matter of utmost importance in this war, where so much hinges on the single word term. Further details of the new Allied command apparently are unknown here, or else are being kept a closely guarded secret. In any event, there is a great deal of speculation as to the location of the headquarters. Some say it is likely that General Wavell will select Malaya, whereas others are of the opinion that Java is the logical place, because it occupies the key position in this section of the theater of war. Nevertheless, there is wholehearted approval here for the plan. In fact, for any plan which brings the Allied nations closer together. Local observers are wondering where the Dutch commanders-in-chief will fit into the picture. Although General Terporton has only been in command a short time, he has already demonstrated his ability as a master strategist, in addition to the fact that he was Chief of Staff under General Berescott from the very beginning of the Indies defense preparations. Very little need be said about the ability of Admiral Helfrich, the naval commander-in-chief, who was directly responsible for the Dutch assistance in the operations with the British in Borneo and off Malaya, as well as with the American forces at Naval, to say nothing of the independent thrusts made at Japanese supply lines by the Dutch Navy, which, so far, are the only important successes in all the Allied operations against the Nipponese, a fact that is acknowledged by the press throughout the world. The latest communique of the Netherlands Indies fighting forces reads, there was little enemy air activity over the territory. Only at a few points, Japanese aircraft were observed. No bombs were dropped anywhere. In the northwestern part of the archipelago, a Greek steamer has been bombed by Japanese aircraft. Particulars about damage done to the ship have not yet been received. End of the communique. Another expression of loyalty reached the government today from the Aceh warriors in North Sumatra. They have offered to organize guerrilla bands to harass enemy landing parties and parachutists. Any attempted landings in Aceh areas would find hard going against these unsubdued jungle fighters. I now return you to the National Broadcasting Company.
We now return you to New York.
Again in our newsroom in New York, we bring you a late bulletin from Moscow. The Soviet Information Bureau declared today that the Russian advance is continuing.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North America and all the ships at sea. This is your New York correspondent, Walter Winchell, representing the Navy Relief Society, the sponsor of this program and the beneficiary of the great heavyweight championship fight on Friday night. This is a program to keep you entertained for the next 30 minutes, and also to preview Mutual's championship fight between heavyweight champion Joe Louis and Buddy Bear. It is staged by Mike Jacobs, the country's #1 boxing promoter, Friday night at Madison Square Garden, New York. Besides the delightful adventures and melody of Dave Rose's orchestra and Betty Jane Rhodes from Hollywood, you will hear the talented Walter Houston and Brian Donletti in an original dramatization. Mr. Houston and Mr. Donlevy are appearing on this Navy Relief show as member representatives of the Hollywood Victory Committee for Stage, Screen, and Radio. Then, from Greenwood Lake, New York, you will hear the voice of Joe Louis, the heavyweight champion of the world. The magic carpet now takes you to KHJ, Hollywood, California.
Good evening from Hollywood, America. Here is music for you and the Navy. David Rose's orchestra, conducted by Lou Bring, and the voice of Betty Rhodes. The song is the title song from Betty Rhodes' most recent picture, The Fleet's In.
Hey there, mister, you better hide your sister, 'cause the fleet's in, the fleet's in. Hey there, mister, don't say nobody's kissed her, 'cause the fleet's in, the fleet's in. If they do as well on the sea as they do on the shore, hey there, Congress, you can tax us some more. Kid me, I'm always kidding. Hey there, rookie, you better call your cookie and your sweet thing. The fleet's in, they'll take anything if it is a nailed down. She may be dark or fair, those sailors don't care, as long as she's wearing a gown. So if you love her, keep under cover, the fleet's in town. Oh, the fleet's in. Hey there, mister, don't say nobody's kissed her, 'cause the fleet's in. If they do as well on the sea as they do on the shore, hey there, Congress, you can tax us some more. And charge to Walter Winchell, hey there, rookie, you better call your cookie and your sweets in. The fleet's in, they'll take anybody who's wearing a gown. So sister, I suggest have everything pressed, get dressed in your best hand-me-down. Tonight we show up, 'cause it's the blow-up, the fleet's in town.
And now it's anchors away, mates, full speed ahead. Back to the WOR Mutual Studios in New York.
This is Walter Winchell again, back in New York City. Friday night, in a bout unique in the annals of boxing, Joe Louis gives Buddy Bear another crack at the heavyweight championship. The fight is unique in that both Joe Louis and promoter Mike Jacobs are donating their share of the purse to the Navy Relief Society. And let's salute Mike Jacobs for turning over his star attraction to this very worthy cause. It is first and always a great fight, and second, a charity event of mammoth proportions. Last May, Louis and Bear clashed in Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C., and the result was one of the most thrilling and controversial matches in boxing's long history. It is worth going back to that first Bear-Louis fight. Here is Mutual Sports and Special Features Director Tom Slater to tell you about it.
Thank you, Walter Winchell. This fight is really the story of two brothers and the boy who became a man under a baptism of fire. It all began when Buddy Bear, a huge 245-pound kid, was signed by promoter Mike Jacobs to fight Joe Louis the first time. For 10 years, the name Bear had been a legend in boxing. But it was never Buddy Bear. It was always handsome, dashing, wisecracking Max who caught the fancy of the crowd. Max, the unpredictable, the showman, the clown. In the shadow, this great thespian of the ring had huddled the huge, shy figure of Buddy Bear. No one took him seriously. He won fights, but he was just Max's brother. Max treated him with a pat on the head, and so did the boxing world. Even after Max had faded from the pugilistic scene, this still happened. It was just Max's brother. He went about his training sullenly, convinced that no matter what he did, he would always be just Max's brother. And so it was that alone, Buddy walked down the aisle to the ring that night as the crowd gazed at him in silence. Just Max's brother. A few minutes later, the fight began, and let's go to the ringside on that night with Don Dunphy. It's midway in the first round.
Now Joe Louis drives a sharp left hand to Buddy Bear's head, and Bear retaliates with a left and a right to the champ's body. Fight a step back. They're sparring for an opening. Bear moves in again and smashes a terrific left hook to Lewis's chin. Joe is down. He's fallen through the ropes. Louis is out of the ring. The referee is counting. It's 2, 3, 4. Joe is climbing back in again. Now the fighters are returning to their corners. But wait a moment. Referee Arthur Donovan is calling him back. The bell has not rung. Joe Louis leads with a light left hand. He fires another hard right.
And the second later, the bell did sound, ending the most exciting round since the memorable Dempsey-Furpo fight. 35,000 spectators in Griffith Stadium stood and roared as the two men slugged and fought through the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth rounds. The sixth had almost ended when...
And standing toe-to-toe, the champion and challenger are trading smashing lefts and rights to the head and body. Now they go into a clinch. The referee separates them. Now Joe Louis comes out and lashes with a terrific right hand to Bear's face. Buddy is down. The count is 2. It's 3. He's getting up to one knee. 4, 5, 6, 7. He's up again. Louis is moving in for the kill. He fires a hard right hand to Bear's head. Louis misses with a right to the head, but follows with a hard left hand, and Bear is down again. Buddy is struggling to his feet. He's punching back like a wild man. Joe Louis is giving ground, but Joe fires a terrific right hand just at the bell. Buddy Bear is down. But wait a second. Ansel Hoffman, the manager of Bear, is in the ring. He's asking referee Arthur Donovan to disqualify Louis for hitting after the bell. Newspapermen, spectators are in the ring. Confusion is everywhere. The bell is sounded for the 7th round, but Ansel Hoffman claims a foul. Every man and woman is screaming at the top of their lungs.
And so ended one of the most exciting and controversial spectacles ever seen in a prize ring. A few minutes later, Buddy Bear, tears of impotent rage streaming down his face, looked up from the corner of his dressing room. For the moment, the youngster tried to speak, but suddenly his eyes wandered off into space. What's that? He murmured through cut and bleeding lips. Bear's manager rushed over. Why, that's the cheers of the crowd, said the manager. Well, cheering for Louis, I suppose, said Bear. Louis, shrieked the manager. They're not cheering for Louis. Listen, they're cheering for you, Buddy Bear. The youngster listened, and then slowly, silently, he got up and began to dress. For the first time, Buddy Bear stood erect, drawn up to his full height of 6 feet, 6 1/2 inches. A boy had become a man under a baptism of fire. Buddy Bear was no longer just Max's brother.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was thrilling as the fight itself. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to say thanks again to the great many of you who voluntarily sent me $1 bills and other contributions for the Navy Relief Society. 2 Sunday nights ago, I first spoke of this charity over the air without making an appeal for money. The next morning, my desk at the Daily Mirror in New York City was bombarded with hundreds of letters containing dollar bills and checks. And so, for the officers and the men of the Navy, thank you very, very much. To tell you the merits of the Navy Relief Society would be to challenge your common sense. I know that you know that all charities are wonderful as the word charity. Let it suffice, then, please, to tell you that the fund is usually supported by the officers and the men of the Navy themselves, and that it helps the nearest of kin and the families of Navy men everywhere. For example, as soon as Pearl Harbor and the Philippines were bombed, the Navy Relief Society cabled $50,000. That tells the story, I think. Not one Navy family went hungry or without shelter because of the Japs' low blows. If you were among those who sent $1, or if you are going to be one of the 21,000 to attend the Madison Square Garden fight Friday night next, you can certainly feel that your dollar will be your personal hand grenade. The magic carpet takes you now to the training camp of Joe Louis at Greenwood Lake, New York.
Yes, we're up at Murchio's camp at Greenwood Lake, New York. And in this corner, big as life, is Joe Louis, 19 title defenses older than when he won the World Heavyweight Championship back in 1937. You know, Joe remembers a bit of this and that about each contender, but he recalls a great deal about Buddy Bear.
I sure do. 6 feet, 6 1/2 inches of him.
Well, tell us about that fight.
Well, Dan, it was short but not sweet. There I was, head first, outside of the rope, looking up at Buddy Bear. All I could think of was Empire State Building.
Well, seriously speaking, Joe, what makes you think Bear will not repeat?
Not nothing is sudden in boxing. This time, I'll be watching Bear left and right.
What do you mean, Joe, left and right?
Before the last fight, I was warned, look out for Buddy's right. That wasn't right.
Why?
Because it was his left that sent me outside the ropes.
I think I see what you mean. Well, time even matters up. You stopped him in the 7th round, didn't you, Joe?
Yes, but it's proven one thing. Bear a game guy, like all good fighting Americans. He keeps coming back and dishing it out.
And he'll be coming back again Friday night. How do you feel about that?
That's okay with me for 2 reasons.
What's the first reason, Joe?
Well, I'll be helping the Navy Relief Society, a very good cause.
Yes, Joe, you're donating your entire purse to the Navy Relief Society. Isn't this the first time a heavyweight champion is fighting for nothing?
For nothing, I'm risking my towel for my country.
And, Joe, that's a lot. Our country.
Yes, Dan, I'm fighting for the thing that make it possible for me to become the heavyweight champion of the world. American land of opportunity means a whole lot to me.
You certainly punch with more than your educated fists. You punch with those words, Joe. Now tell me, what's the second reason for wanting to fight Bear again?
I want to wipe out that funny finishing of the Washington fight.
And how do you call it for Friday night?
This time I want to make it clean cut. I'm going to take aim and keep punching.
That's a good idea.
That's right. I'm going to take aim and keep punching. That goes for you, too, Mr. Hitler, and your buddies.
Thank you, heavyweight champion Joe Louis. And back to Walter Winchell in New York.
Thank you, Joe Louis. There's very little I or anyone can say by way of appreciation for what you are doing. That appreciation will be eloquently expressed by the deafening applause from the fans at the Garden when you step into the ring on Friday night. And so, Joe, until then, this is your New York correspondent, Walter Winchell, again saying thanks for the Navy Relief Society. The magic carpet switches you once again to KHJ, Hollywood, California.
You've been listening to what those fellows had to say, Winchell, Joe Louis, and all of them?
Yes, I have.
Mighty swell guys, don't you think?
Mighty swell, mighty.
Yeah. My name's Walter Houston.
Glad to know you, Walter.
You know, just the other day I was talking about the Navy to a friend of mine. You know him, former Navy man, Brian Dunleavy. He's an actor now, works in motion pictures.
Oh, yes, yes.
We were talking about the Navy, he and I. Oh, about a lot of things. Things that those fellows have been talking about, you know, about how easily and naturally and fearlessly it started, and then went about the job it had to do. That was, let's see, 102, 42... That was 165 years ago. It's a long time, 165 years. And yet, you know, the Navy, those raucous, brawny privateers, started way back there, has never let us down. Never once stopped serving the United States faithfully and honestly against all their enemies. That's what their oath says. The oath a sailor takes when he joins up. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the United States of America, and I will serve them faithfully and honestly against all their enemies whomsoever. I guess everything else has changed in the Navy in 165 years, but not the spirit, the purpose behind it, the purpose in that oath. Ever stop to think what that oath means?
Well, for one thing...
Well, I mean what it means to a fellow, well, any young fellow who decides to enlist. I don't care who he is, where he comes from, New York, Chicago, Oshkosh, Podunk, East, West, anywhere. You know, young America. Now, let's take Oshkosh. There's a strapping young fellow. Smart, strong, able. He's decided, so he signs up. Goes to a naval recruiting office.
Right in his own hometown,
yeah,
probably.
Yes, New York, Oshkosh, wherever it is. He signs up and he waits for orders. Dreams about ships and planes. He wants action. So he does. Sure he does. Plenty of it. He loves it. But first, he's got to know what to do and how to do it well. They send him to a training station.
Out at San Diego.
San Diego, yes. Or maybe Newport, back in Rhode Island, or Hampton Roads, Great Lakes, wherever it is. He's learning. He must learn to be neat. He learns to be punctual. He learns cooperation, discipline, and he remembers the oath he took to defend his country honestly and faithfully against all her enemies, whomsoever.
And he'll do it, too. He's a great kid.
No, he isn't a kid now. No, he's a man. Look at him. He's finished his basic training. He's standing his watch, the ship on the line now. He's been on the deck force. He isn't a kid. He's a man. Well-trained, full-fledged sailor in the United States Navy. Look at him now. Look at that young Navy man now.
Fine young fella.
Look at him standing on the deck of the battleship. Look at him swabbing off the deck of that destroyer. Serving his gun on that cruiser. Flying that rocketing airplane. He's in the Navy.
But he's only started.
Oh, yes. Yes, he can go to school, trade school. He can become a pipe fitter, a radio engineer, gunner's mate, a commander, an admiral if he wants to. Admiral John Doe. He's a great guy. He's one of the men who helped to mold the destiny of this country. His very life is the life of hope and freedom. A great guy, that sailor. He thinks like a genius. He acts like a perfect, precise machine. He has the courage of Ajax. 1942. But you know, it wasn't always. Why, once upon a time, we didn't even have a Navy, remember?
Yep, I remember.
Remember how the colonies cheered when Washington took command of their army?
Most everybody did. But Washington had a lot of bad luck.
Bad luck? It plagued him, it trailed him, followed him, cursed him with failing confidence. There was dissension, wrangling. There was desertion and defeat. Defeated Quebec, White Plains. All this, the prelude to Boston. There sits a great general and a great man. There sits George Washington. A crude desk, chair or two, his headquarters. Before him, within the city, a trapped enemy. But the voices of the very people for whom he lived echoed ridicule in his consciousness. Why doesn't he win a great victory? Why?
He has guns.
But there are no munitions.
The enemy is trapped in Boston. Defeat him.
How? How without support? How when Philadelphia does nothing?
Starve him out. Starve him.
Starve him how? He has the sea at his back. The sea is his.
We want a victory. Let's win this war or stop it.
Stop it, I say. It's foolish.
How can you say it's foolish? It's a fight for humanity.
Get rid of him.
Get rid of Washington.
We want action. Action.
Victory.
Victory.
Get rid of Washington.
Action.
Victory.
Action. Wipe down. Wipe down. Fasten your hatches, will you? Stow it. Do you hear? Stow it.
And who, sir, may I ask, are you?
Well, men call me Broughton. Captain Nicholas Broughton of Rhode Island. Good evening, sir.
Broughton, an uncommon name, but an uncommon title. To be sure, captain, eh?
Yes, sir. Captain of my own ship.
Well, how can you help? What do you want?
Letters of marque and reprisal. If I can get General Washington's name on a piece of paper that says I can arm my ship and fly the American flag, I and my friends will show you what we can do. Give me the letters, the guns, the flag, and 30 days at sea. I'll bring back powder enough to hold our independence for 100 years.
Well, George signed. He signed. And Captain Nicholson Broughton sailed. The friends he spoke of sailed with him, out into the rough, open sea, and into the history of the great nation whose foundations they made firm. Hopkins, Barry, Biddle, Perry, Rogers, Decatur. Brave men, great men all, toughened by hard living and hard work. Sailors, as some men are poets and makers of music. Sailors with all their hearts. They sailed out to win Boston and pave the way to freedom for the colonies. Sailed against the superior enemy, seeking to find him and to fight.
Captain Broughton, sir?
Hi, Mr. Bagley. Off the starboard quarter, I heard. What is she? Can you make her out?
She wears enemy colors, Captain.
Mm-hmm. Big one.
Aye, sir.
A rich one, too, I'll wager.
Aye, and riding low.
Mm-hmm. Hold full of powder for General Washington, or I miss my guess. Put your helmet!
She looks to outgun us 2-1, sir.
Aye. Coming about to cross our bow, I do believe.
Listen.
We're flying the American flag. Ain't that enough? Go to blazes! Man your battle stations. Prepare to open fire.
All hands to battle stations! All hands to battle stations!
Stand by to repel boarders. Put your helm a bit there. Ready. Commence firing.
And that was the birth of the United States Navy. With one broadside, from one little ship, one day, 1 hour, 165 years ago, those men knew one thing. Their country needed munitions, powder to make its spirit count for liberty and peace and freedom among men.
Yep, but I don't reckon they knew how much it meant.
15 days. No word from Broughton at sea. 20 days. People jeer and grumble. 1,000 men desert. And even the few who've remained unswervingly faithful will so long begin to question. 25 days. This was a new nation. This was a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Fighting for the first breath of life. Reaching for the cup of victory. With failure parching their lips. 30 days. Time was gone. No word from Broughton. No word from the sea at all. Washington sat down solemnly to write the tragic words that would put an end, for a while at least, to the dissension that rent his country's heart and his. Then, in that blackest hour, the thunderous roar of triumph suddenly began. Began with a voice that tensely called, "A sail on the horizon!" Began with the sound of cannon and a voice that called from the sea.
1 sail, 2 sails, 10 sails, 20 more than you can count. We've done it. General Washington, do you hear? Perry, Decatur, the rest and I, we've brought 'em back. 35 ships, 35 supply ships captured for you, General Washington. For you, America. 35 full holes of the powder you need. Powder enough to hold our independence for 100 years.
So you see, it wasn't always like it is today.
Not by a long shot.
A handful of ships flying the new flag of free men, upholding the rights and the destiny of a new nation of free men. That was the birth of our Navy. That was the start of a force that's become a tremendous force for liberty and humanity. That's what it is today, written in the lifeblood of Broughton, Perry, and Jones, and Dewey, and thousands of American seamen. The oath to bear true faith and allegiance to the United States of America and to save them faithfully and honestly against all their enemies.
Yep, that's right.
Yes, and look at it now. Look at those battleships, destroyers, planes, Look at him on the high seas. Look at him on the storm-tossed waters. Look at him on the ice-caked water, the moonlit, sunlit waters of the world, with the spirit and the ideal of America, and the flag of America flying proud and high. Look at him. Look at him everywhere.
Yep. It's the greatest Navy in the world.
Yes, you can say that again, Uncle Sam. Your Navy, the greatest Navy in the world.
Thank you, Walter Houston and Brian Donlevy. Now the voice of Betty Rhodes and Lou Bring directing David Rose's orchestra in Vincent Heuman's great song, Great Day.
When you're down and out, lift up your head and shout, there's gonna be a great day. Angels in the sky promise that by and by there's gonna be a great day. Gabriel will warn you some early morn, you will hear his horn. Rootin' tootin', it's not far away. Hold up your hands and say, there's gonna be a great day.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fight on Friday night is being presented in behalf of the Navy Relief Society. This is the Navy's own charity that provides speedy care for needy families of men on active duty in Uncle Sam's Navy. If you would care to contribute to this vital cause, send your contribution, however small, to the Navy Relief Society, 90 Church Street, New York City.
So have the screen, boxing, radio, and the Navy itself spoken to America. Speaking for the Navy, we've heard Walter Winchell, your New York correspondent. For the screen, we've heard the incomparable acting of Walter Houston and Brian Donlevy. For boxing, Joe Louis, the great champion, has spoken on the eve of his Friday night title match with Buddy Baer in Madison Square Garden. We thank Mike Jacobs and his radio contact man, Erwin Rossi, and sports writer Barney Nagler. A word of appreciation to Don Dunphy, who will broadcast the Louis Baer bout over the Mutual Network Friday evening. And for radio, the Donley Studios in Hollywood have been proud to contribute the music of David Rose's orchestra and the voice of Betty Rhodes. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
This is Rita Murray, ladies and gentlemen, speaking to you from Hollywood, California, under the banner of Breakfast Club Coffee and saying, hello there, another day and another chance. Friends, what with the whole country talking about conservation, cutting down on the use of this and that, making things go further and all, it sort of occurred to me that it might not be a bad idea to cut down a bit of impatience. Cut down a bit on impatience, or the use of an ugly, quick temper, which may be inclined to say, why should I do without these things? I am an American citizen and entitled to the use of things in this country. I know such attitudes aren't general, thank goodness, for most people have pitched in right up to the hilt. But they do exist in remote spots. So I thought if we could just check over our own selves a bit, instead of resenting the new way we must all go, if we are continue to enjoy our own way of life and make up our own minds to cooperate to the fullest, we will have formed an army that can and will stand up to anything. And friends, speaking of forming an army against a common enemy, of course, that's what we're all speaking about these days. We do have a common enemy, every one of us. It also occurred to me that this is the best chance we have ever had to date, that I know of, I guess, or that anyone else knows of, to regiment ourselves. Whenever we feel a bit of belligerency coming on, and heaven knows we always are conscious of that when it starts coming, you know as well as I do that you can tell when you begin to feel a bit belligerent or a bit antagonistic or a bit itchy, if you like the word. a bit on the off side. Nobody has to tell you that. You know that before anybody else. But whenever we feel that way and are inclined to be a bit snappy or quick, or are inclined to be a bit impatient because someone doesn't move fast enough to suit us, or perhaps things aren't going our way, or maybe we want our own way and can't have it. How often we want our own way and resent horribly the thought that we can't have it. And we do most anything and everything we can think of to create a condition that brings about our way of thinking, our way of doing things. And whenever we are thwarted, there's a word, whenever we are crossed a bit, we become awfully impatient. We become so impatient that we get a bit belligerent. And that's a bad thing. It's a bad thing for anybody, not only for the people who have to listen to us or who have to take our belligerency, but to ourselves as well, because the kickback, the backwash, if you want, is not pleasant. And we never enjoy the after feeling that comes with such a bit of indulgence. It isn't nice. It really isn't, and I think you all will agree with me on that. But whenever we do feel that way, right then and there is a pretty good place to stop and say, what's this all about anyway? How can I expect to present a strong front and conquer the enemy unless I can conquer myself? And whenever you have done that, friends, you have really accomplished much. You are truly making your influence for good go much further. And speaking of influence, for good or bad, influence is something that we don't make any physical effort about. It's something that comes quite unconsciously. Real influence is, it's a subtle thing, and it can be for the good just as well as for the bad. You don't see influence, friends. You feel it, you experience it. You never see the wind. You feel it. You see the effectiveness of it in the blowing of branches on trees and leaves, but it's there nevertheless. You never see a perfume. You never see a melody. But the effectiveness is there. The melody is remembered. The perfume is remembered. So the influence stays on, even though unseen. And so it is with our influence. It can be for good or bad, but influence of the right kind will stay, friends, for a long, long time and go much further than you ever dreamed of. And it's a pretty good thing, I believe, to see that these attitudes, these thoughts, these actions of ours are on the right side of the ledger, especially now, when it is so important to maintain an even keel, proper balance as we go along. It doesn't take much, you know, to sort of upset a thing. And if enough of us rock the boat, so to speak, we'll turn it over. But if we don't, our influence and our own thoughts will go much further than we ever dreamed on the right side. And speaking of making things go further, friends, Breakfast Club coffee is way out in front in that respect, because of their now famous roast and chill process, which actually makes Breakfast Club last ever so much longer. And when I say last ever so much longer, I mean that Breakfast Club actually preserves and sustains the first roast of freshness until the last bit of coffee is used, even from a large 2-pound tin, so long as you complete Breakfast Club's roast and chill process by keeping Breakfast Club coffee in the refrigerator. It's as easy as that. And here's all you have to do. After making the first brew, replace the lid on the tin and keep the tin in the refrigerator or wherever you keep the other perishable foods. By so doing, you prevent the essential oils, which are the flavor and aroma of coffee, from growing stale, thus ensuring lasting freshness in your Breakfast Club coffee. And what does this mean? How does it make the coffee go any further? It simply means that when coffee is fresh, you don't use so much. Only when it grows stale do you keep adding more to maintain the strength you like. So, with Breakfast Club coffee, you never need add one bit more coffee as you go along in order to maintain that strength. For the original freshness, strength, and flavor are always present in Breakfast Club coffee so long as you do complete their own roast and chill process. Hence, Breakfast Club does last much longer and goes much further. So aside from its own natural goodness, It's a saving in dollars and cents not only to use Breakfast Club coffee, but to buy the large 2-pound tins as well. Breakfast Club's good coffee, friends, and I do want you to try it. There's quite a bit I'd like to talk about this morning, friends, although I don't have the completed information on it, so I'm going to save it. It's regarding the knitting, the furnishing of yarn to those who are unable to furnish it for themselves but have the time to knit the sweaters and the scarves or mufflers for the men in service. I don't have anything definite on it as yet. As I said, I've been unable to get anything definite. But as soon as I do, I can assure you that I will report whatever I find out about it to you, to those of you who are interested enough to do something about it. So if you'll just stand by, we'll see what can be done. And by that I mean we'll see how, or if it's possible. I don't say how, I say if it is possible to have the yarn furnished by those who feel unable to spare the time but can furnish the yarn, for those who have the time but cannot afford the yarn. And right there, I know a great many of you can afford to buy enough yarn for sweaters or mufflers. I know that. And I know that a great many of not only of you, but all of us, spend much time sitting around doing nothing with our hands. And even while we're chatting, it doesn't hurt to carry a little bag with a roll of yarn in it and some knitting needles. If you don't know how to knit, you can very easily learn. I know that's very simple because I even learned to knit, believe that or not. And it can be done very, very easily, and many spare moments spent idly chatting, which is all right, we should do that, could be spent knitting as well. I mean, it doesn't detract one bit from the conversation and accomplishes much in the way of providing a warm sweater for some lad who may be needing it quite badly. It doesn't take much of your time, but it will help to keep some of these boys warm on some very cold days and nights. And it isn't very much for us to do, so if you can possibly afford to buy it, I don't mean to deprive yourself of your food or your living, but if it's within the realm of your pocketbook and your budget, do buy enough yarn and go ahead and make a sweater or make a muffler. I'd like to hear how you're getting along on that, friends. I really would. And I do appreciate your letters expressing your willingness to cooperate in that respect after our last week's broadcast, or after our last broadcast, I should say. And be assured that we will get these things coordinated sometime, sooner or later. It does take just a bit of time to do all we want, but we can't always rush things. I guess you know that, too. Friends, I had an experience that surprised me a little bit last week when I was driving over the ridge. I wasn't driving over the bridge. I take that back. I was sitting along the highway, parked in an automobile, watching traffic go by. I wasn't sitting there especially to watch the traffic go by, but I happened to be there anyway. And I noticed a car pass by with a sticker which said, "Welcome to Ride Servicemen" on the windshield. It was one of the stickers that we send out, we of this program. A red, white, and blue sticker. There were soldiers, there were lads in uniform, standing on the highway looking for rides, not asking for one, mind you, but just standing there. And this car just sailed by as big as life, looked at the soldiers, looked at both of them, and then went on their way merrily. There was a very large rear seat empty. I could see that. There was plenty of room to pick those boys up. Now, of course, it's each individual's right to decide whether they want to pick up a serviceman or not. That is your own privilege, of course. I do know that. But on the other hand, whenever you display a sticker or a sign or make any indication that you will help a man in uniform and then you fail to do it, I think that's sort of sailing under false colors. I think it quite definitely is. So, friends, unless you really and truly mean that you will pick up a man in uniform and give him a ride if he's going, not only if he's going your way, go out of your way a little bit if necessary, and take him wherever he's going. It's a very little bit that we as civilians can do to help these lads in uniform. They're out there defending us to the death if necessary. They don't make a great deal of money. They're not permitted to thumb, ride, or hitchhike. But they're not prevented from accepting a ride if we give it to them. These stickers that we have which say Welcome to Ride Servicemen have an additional line which say Remember Pearl Harbor. And I don't think any of us will ever forget Pearl Harbor. We don't want to, I know. And we put them on our windshield, and they mean that we will pick up a lad. That's his indication that we are ready and willing to do that. And if we really mean it, send for stickers. But if you don't mean it, if you're just going to put them on your windshield as pretty stickers, why, don't send for any, please, because you're only sailing under false colors. You're not helping anybody and surely letting yourself way, way down. These stickers come without any obligation to you. There's no cost, there's no red tape, there's no charge. All you do, now, if you listen carefully, is to send a self-addressed stamped envelope, to me, Rita Murray, Columbia Square, Hollywood, California, and the sticker will be sent to you. That's all in the world you have to do, friends. Just remember to enclose with your request a self-addressed stamped envelope to me, to Rita Murray, Columbia Square, Hollywood, and the stickers will come to you without any obligation other than that you, in your heart, mean that you want to do something for these lads who are doing so much for you, these men in uniform who represent our colors, which are quite definitely red, white, and blue. Of course comes now the place where I say that I'll be back again, same time, same day, and same stations. Until then, just this, friends. Because Breakfast Club coffee does stay fresh all the way through, even to the last in a large 2-pound tin, when you complete the roast and chilled process, it means that the last cup of steaming hot Breakfast Club made from the last bit of coffee in a 2-pound tin will be just as delicious as the first cup you enjoyed from the same tin. Breakfast Club coffee is like that, friends, and I would like you to try it next time. This is Rita Murray speaking under the banner of Breakfast Club coffee and agreeing with Horace Mann, who said, "It is well to think well. It is divine to act well." God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ted Collins, and you are listening to a program dedicated to the American Red Cross.
And hello, everybody. This is Kate Smith.
We are met this evening to consider for the scope of half an hour America.
Yes, America. 3,022,387 square miles, divided into towns and counties, consisting of churches and schools, drugstores and movie houses.
Consisting of 8 great rivers and 5 great lakes, and 630 million acres of forest.
Yes, and croplands and pastures, woodlands and grazing grounds, roads, parks, reservations, deserts, swamps, mountains, railroads.
And being a government composed of 3 coordinate branches, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial.
And composed of 48 states, 1 district, and several territories. All American. All to be defended.
You've gone to war to defend those things, America.
Yes, those things and these things.
The pattern trees make above your house, and the long, vigilant line of them down the street.
The warm, friendly smell of breakfast, and kisses bestowed on small scrub faces scurrying off to school. The broken back stair steps that you've been meaning to get fixed for years.
The way the wind blows through the meadows where you have your summer picnic. and the cool embrace of the water.
The curves of all the highways in the whole country, and the adventure lurking behind them. The unchanging stars above those highways, and the whims of the weather along them.
The silhouettes of cities against the midnight. The seductive whisper of the Midnight Express. The loneliness of foghorns and bellboys. Rains and fogs and snows that wander across the country.
Yes, that wander across the country until they reach your house and become part of the pattern of your daily life. You've gone to war for all these things, America. All these little things that have become suddenly sacred. Things to live and fight and die for.
America. 48 states indivisible. One of the last strongholds of democracy. Football, baseball, chewing gum, hot dogs, hockey, tennis, stenographers, hat-check girls, bankers, lawyers, tailors. All Americans laughing at America and laughing with America and singing at the top of their lusty young lungs songs like this.
Hi there, neighbor, going my way. East or west on the Lincoln Highway. Hi there, Yankee, get out with a great big thanky. You're in God's country. Grass is greener, timber taller, mountains bigger and trouble smaller. Hi there, Chappie, look over the seas, be happy. You're in God's country. 100 million rooters can't be wrong, so give a hand, give a hand, give a cheer for the land, where smiles are broader, freedom greater, every man is his own dictator. Hi there, Yankee, give out the great big thanky. You're in God's country, God's country. Give a cheer for your land, give a cheer, understand, we're in God's country. Have you ever stopped to realize what it means to be able to say, I am an American? To claim as birthright all these things we are considering? Well, once upon a time, according to story, there was a man who threw aside that birthright. Let's retell that story now.
Order in the court. Order in the court, please. The attorney for the state will continue, please.
You knew Aaron Burr was a traitor to his country, didn't you? Didn't you?
The prisoner will answer the question, please.
I did not know it at the time. Is it not true that you were part of a conspiracy to destroy the government of the United States? No, that isn't true. You were seen repeatedly in the company of Aaron Burr. I only talked to the man. I didn't know he was plotting treason. Everyone who knew Aaron Burr knew that every word he uttered was treason. And yet you talked with him. You tried to betray the uniform you wear, the flag you follow. You are as much a traitor to the United States of America as he was. Isn't that true, Mr. Nolan? It isn't true. It isn't true, I tell you. I never was party to any treason. I rest the case, Your Honor.
Philip Nolan, rise and face the court. Is there anything you wish to say to show that you have always been faithful to the United States?
The United States? Damn the United States! I wish I may never hear of the United States again.
Who was that man? Who would dare utter such treason? Come over closer to the radio. I want to tell you a story about you, America. About you and your growing. This is not the story of a national hero, but of Philip Nolan, who severed a bond before he knew its value. Listen to the story of the man without a country. Think way back to the 1800s. Remember America? zealous old Tom Jefferson was in the White House. And down in the South was a man named Aaron Burr and a man named Philip Nolan. They say now that history has sifted the facts and weighed the evidence, they say Philip Nolan was as fine as any officer in the Western Division. And he might have gone to his final sleep among the vine-covered homes of the dead in Orleans as quietly as any of them, had a star not crossed his path one night.
Mr. Nolan, I am Aaron Burr. I am told you are a young man of remarkable promise. I should like to talk with you about your future.
Why, thank you, sir. I hardly know what to say. Thank you. A star comes that way sometimes. Sudden, blinding, dazzling. And it was only a step from Aaron Burr's side to a trial for treason.
The United States versus Philip Nolan.
He was bewildered, deeply hurt, embittered. Above all else, he was young. An older man would have checked his anger. A traitor would have been wise enough to hide his feelings. But Philip Nolan was neither sage nor traitor. A moment's silence, and then those words that were to echo forever through his life.
I wish I may never hear of the United States again.
I wish I may never hear of the United States again. I wish I may never hear of the United States again. I wish I may never hear of the United States again.
The words filled the courtroom, shivered against the walls. The judge and jury rose and left the court wordlessly. No one else stirred. Someone in the back of the room sighed. Someone else coughed. That was all. 15 minutes went by like 15 years before the judge returned.
Prisoner, hear the sentence of the court. The court decides, subject to the approval of the President, that you shall have your wish. You will never hear the name of the United States again.
It was the fall of 1807. It would be 1863 before he heard her name again. The leaves would grow red in Maryland soon. They would be piled along the Potomac for burning. Their smoke would be laced against the November sky. They would be tapping the trees for maple sugar in the Vermont woods. And the New England housewives would be cracking the nuts for the Thanksgiving pudding. The Cape Cod fishermen would go out in the gray dawn for their nets. And the harvest would be a bright promise against the Indiana hillside. And the Mississippi would go slipping on through the heart of America. But not for Philip Nolan. His heritage of 4 leaves and Thanksgiving puddings and Christmas trees, those lovely, casual things that make up a nation's tradition, were all lost to him. His was the sea and the bitterness of salt on his lips, and no port at evening. And in one sudden, heart-stabbing moment, Philip Nolan knew what he had lost.
Sir, you will receive from Lieutenant Neal the person of Philip Nolan, later lieutenant in the United States Army. You will take the prisoner on board your ship, and under no circumstances is he ever to hear of his country or to see any information regarding it.
So Philip Nolan walked the decks of the 7 seas and thought about America. He was a ghost among his companions, drifting from port to port, listening to a word that filled his heart, that reached him in the wind that sighed from the rigging, that the waves whispered through the midnight. One word: America.
The grass
Soldiers are in the streets of Orleans now. It's almost time for the Mardi Gras. Remember the girl you kissed at the Mardi Gras. The snow is thick and white in New England. They're riding through the Christmas parties. Can't you hear the sleigh bells? How long is it since you heard the sleigh bells?
Leave me alone. I can't stand thinking anymore. Oh, God, let me stop remembering.
I wish I may never hear of the United States again. I wish I may never hear of the United States again. I wish.
The court decides, subject to the approval of the President,
No.
that you will have
No.
your wish.
So he could never find peace. Ships docked, set sail, men went home on leave. He watched in wordless agony. And then, one night in the Mediterranean, some ladies were invited aboard for a ship's ball. All that was young in Philip Nolan died that night.
Anne Emery.
Why, Philip Nolan. This is a surprise.
It's been a long time, Anne.
Yes. A very long time. You're looking splendid, Mr. Nolan. The sea evidently agrees with you.
I had forgotten how lovely you are.
Come, Mr. Nolan.
Let's go out on deck a moment.
If you like.
I tried to see you before I left. They wouldn't let me see anyone.
I understand. I was very busy at the time anyhow. I was married soon after you left.
Married?
Yes, of course. Hadn't you heard? I have a little boy now.
A little boy? You must be very happy.
I am, Philip.
There are a lot of things I would like to say to you, but that I will never say. You understand, don't you?
I understand.
It's strange that we should meet again way out here. I've never thought to see you again.
I'm a little sorry we did meet. I had forgotten you. It was better that way.
I loved you very much. I loved you and I lost you and everything else I loved in one mad moment. Oh, my dear.
I think we should get back to the dances.
Tell me, just one more thing. What do you hear from home?
Home, Mr. Nolan? I thought you were the man who never wanted to hear of home again.
I beg your pardon. Good night. Philip Nolan knew in that moment how alone he was. One man with only the sea for the rest of his life, and one nameless port at the end of it. The days became weeks, the weeks years that marched across his forehead and left him old. His eyes were deep pools of loneliness, his heart completely empty. And no one knew until the day he was dying how deep his hurt had gone. No one knew until that day when they entered his room for the first time and found it a shrine to America. The stars and stripes were draped around a picture of Washington, and he had painted a majestic eagle with its foot clasping the whole globe. At the foot of his bed was a great map of the United States, drawn from memory, with almost forgotten names on it. The Indian Territory, the Mississippi Territory. Yes, Captain, you see, I have a country.
Yes, I see, Nolan. How do you feel? Is there anything I can do for you?
Captain, I'm dying. I'll never see America again. Listen to me. There is not a man on this ship, or in all the United States, that loves her as I do. Tell me,
Tell me about America. Tell you about America. How can I begin to tell you about America?
He left America in 1807. It was 1863. War had come and gone in 1812, and Francis Scott Key had sat on a British battleship and composed a national anthem. Jackson had taken the Florida Territory. A new flag had been raised in Washington with 13 alternate stripes and 20 stars. 9 presidents had been in the White House. The Monroe Doctrine was born, the cornerstone of foreign policy.
The continents of the Western Hemisphere are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any of the European powers.
The United States were gathering themselves into a nation.
It is not the states, but the people of the nation who have made the Union. It is, sir, the people's constitution, the people's government, made for the people, made by the people, answerable to the people.
Peter Cooper's steam locomotive, the Tom Thumb, drew its first train of cars over 23 miles of B&O Railroad. Andrew Jackson moved the Indians west of the Mississippi. Arkansas, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa were part of the nation. The Battle of the Alamo was fought in Texas, gold was discovered in California, and a new nation spanned 2 oceans. The South and the North were quarreling over slavery, and in the White House, the president whose words were the voice of the new nation.
It is for us, the living, Robert, to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth. It is a great nation. Yes, Nolan. A great nation. A great nation. Nolan.
And so his last thought was of his country. Before they lowered him into the sea, they draped the flag of the United States over his coffin. How proud that would have made him. The captain droned the last rites, the bugler played taps, and the ceremony was over.
Men, we found this paper in Nolan's things. Bury me in the sea. It has been my home, and I love it. But will someone set up a stone for my memory at Fort Adams or at Orleans, so that my disgrace will not follow me through eternity? Say on it, in memory of Philip Nolan, Lieutenant in the Army of the United States. He loved his country as no other man has ever loved her. But no man deserved less at her hand. We will do as he wished. Yes, we will do as he wished.
And so, although the sea claimed him, his soul would know the feeling of land again. The flowers would be near him, and the trees and the earth of America. He would know the seasons and the pulsing life of the nation. There would be a flag over him, and the knowledge of belonging. And thus, a man without a country came home to America.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, in the language of America, let's get down to business.
let's get down to business, you and I, for we have a charge to keep, and there is no time to waste. Out there in the Pacific, there's a man named MacArthur, and other men, too, of all nationalities, boys from New England and California, men from the east side and the west side, all around the town. Tough city slickers and sunburned farmer lads, they're out there, and they're in other places, too, over the far-flung battle fronts. They're all there, and in their veins is the red, white, and blue blood of America. Up in the starlight of the night sky, a lonely flyer keeps his tryst with death, and on the land a wounded soldier lies, while on the seas that span our shores a sailor dreams of home. But we're here. We have a charge to keep, a monument to build. You all know about monuments. Memorial, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, Pioneer Woman, the statue of Paul Revere, monuments to our honored dead. But tonight, we are met to build a new monument, a monument to the living. We are met to build a cross, a monument to mercy. I can't build it alone. Neither can you, or you, or you. But 130 millions of us can build it. We can build it so high, if we will, that it will reach upward to the sky and outward to the farthest lonely outpost, where the sick and the weary and the wounded sigh with labored, halting breath. We can build a red cross so high and so strong that it will be higher than the highest enemy plane and firm as the rocks of our rock-bound coast when the bombs drop nearer home. When the bombs drop nearer home. Do you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? They know what it means in England, in China. They know what it means at Manila. Pearl Harbor knows, and Wake and Guam and Midway. And who are we here, warm in our little homes? Who are we to be free and well-fed and whole? What are we waiting for while the bombs drop nearer home? You're right beside your radio. Lean back in your easy chair. The movies will soon be over now, and the children will come trooping in. Look how the firelight gleams and dances there on the friendly hearth. The snow lies soft and white on the mountains tonight. There's the sound of laughter in the air and a tinkle of sleigh bells. They're dancing under a tropic moon down on the shores of Miami. But the bombs are dropping nearer home. Johnny is learning what blackouts mean, and Susan tugs at a tag at her wrist. It's an identification tag, she says. All the kids at school have them. Yep, the bombs are dropping nearer home. They're curious things, bombs. You can't look up and shake your fist and say, "You can't fall here," for here is a child with golden hair and the blue of the sky in her eyes. And here is an old man dozing in the sun. Why, he never harmed a soul. Here is a woman in labor. Here's a little boy who is lost. You can't fall here. You can't fall now. No, you can't lift up your voice like that, and you can't stop a bomb with a lot of abracadabra. You can't, and I can't. But we can do something. We can build a monument to the living. We can build it with dollars and pennies and dimes. We can build a red cross, poor and rich, young and old, people of every race and color and creed. who are known by the name Americans. We can build a Red Cross, for we are America. America is a heritage you can't measure. You can't describe it in dollars and cents. But we can build our monument with dollars and cents. We can help the sick and the wounded and the hungry with dollars and cents. That is the charge we have to keep, ladies and gentlemen. That is the message I bring to you tonight. This is our job. Let's get to work. Will you please give me a contribution for the Red Cross? Send it to me now, tonight. Address it to Kate Smith, New York City. Give. Please do. I beg of you. Give more generously than you ever gave before. Give for the safety of those you love. Give for all you hold dear. Remember Pearl Harbor, and bear in mind that they started something, but we're gonna end it right in their own backyard. We're proud of our country and proud to defend it, so Yankee Doodle hit 'em hard. Put your shoulders to the wheel, the whole darn world will get a brand new deal.
And so a half hour spent in contemplating the scope of America and the challenge of the hour. On behalf of Kate Smith, I'd like to publicly say thank you to all my associates who have contributed their time and their talents to this program. Jack Miller and the men of the CBS Symphony Orchestra, the actors, Herbert Rudley, John Brewster, Charles Weber, Helen Shields, Julian Noah, Lon Clark, John Griggs, and my collaborators, Gene Holloway and Jane Tompkins. This is Ted Collins saying good night, and this is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
We will safeguard this world for our children. Hollywood's March of Dimes of the Air, 1942.
Ladies and gentlemen, a few days from now, somebody's going to have a birthday. He's Commander-in-Chief of the Army, and he's Commander-in-Chief of the Navy. And I suppose he's commander of a lot of other things. But most of all, he's our president. On account of Friday's his birthday, and on account of his birthday celebrations have helped so many boys and girls to walk and live again, they've asked me to kind of tell you, Mr. President, how everything is in America tonight. Mr. President, the state of the nation on your 60th birthday. Well, first, there's 130 million people. They got names like Smith and Jones and Populus and Ryan and Goldberg and Spinetta and Cabot and, well, there's so many of them, they just can't all be out here in Hollywood tonight to tell you what they think. So a lot of other people by the name of Bing Crosby and Bob Hope and Irene Dunn and the Merrimacs and Claudia Colbert and Humphrey Bogart and Janet Beecher and Dennis Day and Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy and Marlena Dietrich and Tyrone Power and Kay Kaiser and James Cagney and Marino Sullivan and Art Chobler and River McGee and Molly and Don Quinn and Gordon Jenkins and Elliot Lewis and Meredith Wilson and Deanna Durbin and, of course, and... oh, I'm out of breath. They're going to kind of take the other folks' places and tell you just how things are going. First, Mr. President, America's singing all about love and dove and moon and June and you and I and all that stuff. But they're singing a new kind of song, too. New. Yet I guess it's not exactly new. Hear what they're singing now. People sang for Mr. Lincoln during another war. A song about, we're coming, Father Abraham, 300,000 strong. America's singing that song in a different way now, Mr. President. Listen to them sing it.
Freedom, freedom. All God's people are free. Listen to an American troubadour from the USA. A song of freedom for all people who cry out to be free. Free to sail the seven seas, free to worship as we please. If the birds up in the trees can be free, why can't we? I'm bringing a song of freedom to all people, wherever they may be. Free to speak and free to hear, free from want and free from fear. Sons of freedom, far and near who agree, sing with me that all God's people shall be free. Free to speak, free to hear, free from want, free from fear. Sons of freedom, far and near who agree, sing with me that all God's people shall be free.
Well, that takes care of singing. Thank you, Mr. Bing Crosby. And now about laughing. Oh, sure, we're laughing, Mr. President. Laughing good. Laughing because there's 130 million of us who are all together in everything we do. Listen, Mr. President.
Of course. Thank you. Of course, now that Santa Anita's closed, the whole place is deserted. Yesterday, two of Bing Crosby's horses were running around the track when one horse turned to the other and said, "Where is everybody?" The other horse said, "I don't know. They were here when we started." But really, I'm a little nervous tonight. I just finished making a picture with Madeline Carroll. Madeline Carroll, you know, that's the other kind besides AC and DC. But imagine been working 8 weeks with Madeline Carroll, 8 weeks. Imagine what that cost me in vitamin pills alone. But I'll never forget my first love scene with Maddie. She ran her slender fingers through my curly locks, and as she fondled my silken hair... Oh, now, please, as she... Really, my locks, my lovely locks. And as she fondled my silken hair, she bent over and tenderly whispered a word into my ear. Just one word. Dandruff. So we get along great. We already have pet names for each other. I call her my little honey girl, and I didn't know she used that kind of language. But I feel great tonight. I've been up at Lake Arrowhead for a couple of days' rest. Lake Arrowhead, that's 150 miles from here as the crow waves. But you know, at this time of the year, half the people go to Palm Springs, the other half go to Arrowhead, and anyone that's still in Hollywood is better either a tourist or works in an airplane factory. I stopped at a beautiful hotel up there. I warmed my hands, then went out of the joint where I was going to stay. It was a nice place called the Chateau Frostbite. Very beautiful place. It was really a ramshackle place. It was the first time I ever saw a hotel fall apart in slow motion. It was so broken down that it was on the verge of falling, but the termites were afraid to go back and take that last bite. It was a nice place. The rates were very reasonable. $6 a night if you slept 5 in a room. For 50 cents more, you were introduced. I signed the register, and I wanted to pay my bill in advance, but the desk clerk didn't have change for a rubber tire. And boy, was it cold. I took out a $1 bill to buy cigarettes, and when I looked at the dollar, Washington was wearing earmuffs and saying, gee, I wish I had a beard like Abe has. It was so cold that the thermometer didn't point to any temperature. Every few minutes it would just say, this is ridiculous. And boy, was my teeth chattering. I put a letter up to my lips to lick the flap. Honest, I did. I put a letter up to my lips to lick the flap before Well, it's right there. You can... Anyway, before I could stop, my teeth ate it. I ordered a cocktail. It was the first time I ever saw an olive and a pimento fighting to see which one should be in the middle. My room was cold, too. I didn't mind the cold so much, but every 5 minutes a guy would come in and take a side of beef out of the closet. And there was an awful draft coming up from the foot of the bed, so I threw on more blankets. It was still a draft, so I threw on more blankets. Finally, I decided to take off my snowshoes. And, of course, I did a little skiing up there. I wore 2 pairs of skis, one for my feet. I'll never forget, I took off the ski jump and went soaring through the air. And when I landed, my skis were stuck in the ground. A gopher looked up at me and said, okay, bud, you can eat me, but you don't have to use chopsticks. But what sports up at Arrowhead? Bing was there. Bing tried to steer the bobsled, and we went off a cliff. I won't say we sailed very far, but a kid in Missouri looked up and yelled, gee, I thought we had nothing to worry about this far from the coast. Well, here's where I walk, ladies and gentlemen, so let's keep them all walking. Good night.
Well, that takes care of the lapping. Thank you, Mr. Robert Hope. Mr. President, I guess I told you that I was 10. A long, long time ago, maybe even before I was born, all by yourself, you started a fight against the germs that were keeping other children from having as much fun as I'm having. You know these things, Mr. President, but maybe others don't. And in telling you what's going on in America tonight, I guess you'll have to listen to the people talk about you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on January 30th, our president will be 60 years old. I know all of us want him to know that in these critical times, more than ever before, our thoughts and our hopes are with him. We can think that, and we can say that, but there's one way we can prove it, and that is by joining him in the fight against infantile paralysis, that great crusade he began all by himself. that cause which is so close to his heart, by helping him in the fight against this terrible disease that cripples America's children, we can give our president a wonderful birthday gift, because he will know that the dimes and the dollars we send him come to him from our hearts.
Mr. President, I guess you and everybody else know that was Miss Irene Dunn. She said the words that lots of other people wanted to say about you tonight, Mr. President. Well, I've got to go on with my report on the state of the nation. We're swinging it, Mr. President. I'll say. That's the way the fellas on the boats and behind the guns and in the airplanes want it. Don't you think? They'd want to know that the cats are still sprawling, the jitterbugs still cutting the rug, and the quartets are still taking songs apart and putting them together again to a boogie-dee.
There is a land, the western land, mighty wonderful to see. It is the land I understand, and it's there I long to be. The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie sky is wide and high, deep in the heart of Texas. The sage in bloom is like perfume, deep in the heart of Texas. Reminds me of the one I love, deep in the heart of Texas. The coyotes wail along the trail, deep in the heart of Texas. The rabbits rush around the brush, deep in the heart of Texas. The cowboys cry, yippee-yi, deep in the heart of Texas. The doggies bawl and bawl and bawl, deep in the heart of Texas. Ole, ole, oh, the coyotes wail along the trail, deep in the heart of Texas. Ole, ole, and the rabbits rush around the brush, deep in the heart of Texas. The sage in bloom is like perfume, deep in the heart of Texas. Reminds me of the one that I love, deep within the heart of Texas. The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie sky is wide and high, deep in the heart of Texas. The cowboys cry, yi-yi-yi, yippee-yi-yi, yippee-yi-yi. The doggies bawl and bawl and bawl, deep in the heart of dear old Texas, deep in the heart of Texas.
Well, that takes care of the swinging. Thanks, Mary Max. And now, Mr. President, about what America's thinking tonight. I know what we kids are thinking and how grateful we are to you. But what the grown-up folks are thinking, well, that's just too big for me to handle. There's so many things they've got to think about. Here's one of them, and maybe they'd better tell you.
There are people who think they can live apart from the world, who think they can dodge their responsibilities as part of the human family. Martha Ellis said that to me. Listen to her story.
Yes, my name is Martha Ellis. I know why you're here. You want to talk to me about what happened. I'll tell you. It began a week ago. A week ago tonight. Freddie, my husband, was at lodge meeting. The baby was asleep. The door. A woman was standing there. She said,
"Good evening. I'm your neighbor, Mrs. Schaefer. May I come in?"
"Neighbor? Someone in the apartment building. I hadn't paid much attention to my neighbors." "Well, all right. Let her come in for a few minutes. What was the difference?"
"You're the very last person I've called on in the whole building, Mrs. Ellis. But I know you'll want to make it unanimous."
"Unanimous?" I thought to myself, what have I got into? Make what unanimous?
"If you'll sign this petition, Mrs. Ellis."
"Petition for what?"
"I thought you knew. It's about the gangster in the house."
"What?"
"Apparently you don't know. It's that man, Joseph Barr. You know. The newspaper's been full of him. Larceny, racketeering. He's done just about everything.
Just a moment, please. I don't pay much attention to crime news, so I'm afraid I don't know you're Mr. Did you say Barr? And anyway, what's all this to do with me?
But I told you. He's leased an apartment in this building. The apartment right across from yours.
Really?
Well, yes. The rest of us in this building don't feel that we want a man of that sort as our neighbor. So we're requesting the real estate company to have him go. You'll sign, of course.
I will not.
What? What did you say?
I will not sign any petition.
But you heard me say...
Yes, I heard you, but I'm rather allergic to signing petitions.
Mrs. Ellis, I'm afraid you don't understand. This is a serious matter.
Serious? What's serious about it? A gangster moves into the house. I think it's rather amusing.
But you don't understand.
I understand that I'm going to mind my own business.
A man of that character in our building is your business.
Not at all. I'm in my apartment. He's in his. There's quite a wide hallway between us. Wide enough to make petitions quite unnecessary.
You're making a grave mistake, Mrs. Ellis. Good night.
Making a grave mistake. I remember I laughed as she went. The baby woke up then. I went in and laughed as I told him about it. But when Fred came home, I didn't tell him. Oh, no. Why worry Freddie? He was like that woman, worried about other people's business. The gangster in the house? Very funny. All right, Mr. Gangster could have his side, we ours, so why worry about it? Why even think about it? And now, I'll think about it all the rest of my life. Because tonight, Freddie went to lodge meeting. Baby asleep. So peaceful, so very quiet. It's good to feel alone once in a while. And then...
Hello.
Bryce, who... I turned. A man was standing there.
I said, how are you?
What are you doing in here?
Mind if I sit down? Thanks.
Who are you?
Oh, it's a nice place.
Answer me. Who are you?
Your neighbor across the hall, Joe Barr. Pleased to meet you.
You didn't come in the front door. I locked it.
That's all right. I come in the back way.
It's definitely not all right. What do you want?
Want? Nothing. Just to sit here. Just to sit here.
He sat there looking at me. I wasn't afraid. Angry, yes, but not afraid.
You see, little lady, you're doing me a big favor.
Favor?
Yeah. A couple of guys come in my apartment, and they ain't healthy for me to see. So I looked around to see where I could hide out for a little while. Then I remembered that you didn't sign the petition. Oh, I heard about that. So here I am.
Get out of here.
Maybe you didn't hear me. I got to stay here until a couple of guys...
I heard you and you heard me. Get out of here.
The boys, keep it down.
Now, are you going to get out of here, or must I pick up the telephone and call...
Wait a minute. Talk about calling somebody. Maybe you don't understand who I am, lady.
I understand that you're in my apartment, and I don't want you here. So will you please go at once?
Yeah, but I told you there's some guys in my apartment.
But what has that got to do with me? This is my home. Go now.
Yeah. Maybe you don't understand who I am.
You're being ridiculous.
Don't touch that telephone.
I certainly will if I want to. My face. His hand on my face. There wasn't any pain, but I knew his hand had hit my face. The room moving around me, the floor lifting. And then his voice.
You'll be a smart girl now, won't you? Understand? Joe Barr, he didn't get where he is by being a nice boy. Playing like they say the game with the rules. So now you'll be a smart girl.
I heard what he said, yet somehow I didn't. All I could think of was his hand hitting me. No one had ever touched me before, no one. And now this cheap hoodlum. And then suddenly I wasn't thinking of that anymore. The shop, the window. My baby crying. I ran into the bedroom, too. Baby, darling. Don't be afraid.
Bert, come out of there. Put your hands up. Listen, Copper. There's a kid in here in a day.
Now, don't try anything. A kid and a dame.
Then I understood. The men out there. Police after him.
Cry, I tell you. The coppers ain't going to throw slugs with a kid around. Make him cry.
But my baby didn't want to cry. He was sitting up in my arms, his eyes wide, wondering and listening.
I tell you, make that kid cry. All right? I'll make him cry.
Suddenly, it was as if everything was gone. The room, the noises outside. Just the three of us sort of standing in space. The baby in my arms and he coming toward us.
I'll make him cry, and then I'll take him and I'll walk out of here, because nobody would hurt a kid. Now, would they?
I heard him say that. Take my baby and walk out of there. And then I was moving back away from him. And then behind me it was something. The bureau drawer. Freddie's gun was in my hand. Yes. My name is Martha Ellis. I have a husband and a child. A week ago, they were all there was to life.
It's about the gangster in the house.
1 week ago.
I'm in my apartment. He's in his. There's quite a wide hall between us.
A week ago.
I can always lock the door. A week. You're making a grave mistake, Mrs. Ellis.
A grave mistake. There are people who think they can live apart from the world, who think they can dodge their responsibilities as members of the human family and not pay the piper.
Thank you, Miss Claudette Colbert, Mr. Humphrey Bogart, and Miss Janet Beecher. Well, I guess that takes care of thinking. Oh, no, it doesn't. I mean, they're singing songs now, too, Mr. President, with lots of thinking in them. Like this one.
Things we'll
Mr. Dennis Day. You know, Mr. President, I guess you'll have to stand a little more talking about you and the real reason I'm kind of reporting to you tonight. Somebody's talking, and he's talking to the people, and he's made of wood.
What? Good evening, everybody. Hello, Bergen.
Well, hello, Charlie. Aren't you proud to be included in such an important event, Charlie?
Am I? It's a real privilege, too, to be able to say, Happy birthday, Mr. President.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes. I sit down. And I have a message for all the boys and girls of America.
Well, what is it?
Well, it's just this. Let's give our dimes and keep them walking.
Well, that's very good.
Yes.
That's a fine sentiment, Charlie.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to hear that you're contributing your dimes to this cause.
Well, not only that, Bergen. I don't stop at that.
Oh, you don't?
No. I've even gone so far as writing a book.
Writing a book?
Uh-huh.
Well.
And all the proceeds will go to the March of Dimes.
Well, isn't that fine?
Yes.
And it shows initiative, too.
Uh-huh.
I'm proud of you, Charlie.
Oh, thank you. And what's more, Mr. Bergen, you are the inspiration for my book.
Well.
Uh-huh.
I feel flattered.
Yeah.
Hey, what is your book about, Charlie?
It's about ventriloquism.
Oh, I see. Ventriloquism.
Uh-huh.
What are you calling it? Adventures with a ventriloquist?
No. I'm calling it ventriloquism. It's cure and prevention.
Oh, I see.
Or the ventriloquist racket exposed.
Oh, I see. Well, young man, ventriloquism is not a racket.
Oh?
No. It's a profession.
A profession?
Yes, it is.
So is rag picking, but it's still trash.
All right. That's enough of that, young man. I'd advise you to keep my name out of your book.
Oh, I've done that. You see, in the foreword, I say, any resemblance between a ventriloquist and Edgar Bergen is purely accidental.
Well, so what is it you have to say about me?
Well, you see, I think that will cover the subject.
Yes, I know.
Now, who do you think I dedicate the book to?
Well, I don't know.
Well, to those little unsung heroes, those clever little boys, the ventriloquist assistant.
Oh, I see.
To them, this book is dedicated.
I see. You're dedicating the book to yourself.
That's it.
Well, that makes you a very important little man, doesn't it, in your own estimation?
Yes, it does, yes. After all, Bergen, a good ventriloquist assistant doesn't grow on a tree. I wish I hadn't said that.
Charlie, I don't think you're really qualified to write a book.
No?
Already you've shown profound ignorance of your subject.
Yeah?
Ventriloquism isn't something that you take or leave.
No?
It's something that's given to you.
You mean like malaria?
No. Why, you don't even know the meaning of ventriloquism.
No?
Do you know that it's over 3,000 years old?
No.
Yes. Why, the first known ventriloquist goes way back to the days of the Greeks, a Greek philosopher.
Yeah?
Named Eurycles.
Is that so?
Yes. No. Ventriloquists were even found up among the Eskimos.
They weren't found up there. They were chased up there. Now,
why, you don't even know the meaning of the word.
Well, what does it mean?
Well, it comes from the Latin ventro, meaning stomach.
Yeah?
And locar, meaning to speak.
Speaking from the stomach, huh?
Yes.
Paunch prattle.
Well, that's the literal meaning, yes. Speaking from the stomach.
You're not fooling me. You know that.
I see.
I know how you do it. I can see your lips move.
Yeah.
That burns him up.
Yeah.
I can even do it myself.
Is that so?
Yeah, that's right, chum.
Well, we would be honored with a demonstration.
Gladly. I'll throw my voice in the basement.
All right, go ahead.
Hey, Joe.
What do you want, Charlie?
See?
Yeah.
What are you doing down there, Joe?
Oh, shoveling coal.
See?
Well, that's very good. Continue.
All right. Joe will now sing a song in two voices. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I don't hear anything. Where's Joe?
I think he went outside to send his donation to the March of Dimes. Oh, he did.
Thanks, Mr. Edgar Bergen and Mr. Charles McCarthy. Well, Mr. President, now I'd like to report to you about corn. Corn grows in Illinois, and in Indiana, and in Iowa, and lots of other states. But if you were to take all the corn that grows in all those states of the Union and put it all together, you wouldn't have half as much corn as we've got right out here in Hollywood and over there in New York. Mr. President, a report on the state of corn.
Corn in the theater. The Barometer Theater presents the new, very new, well, almost new theater. A play with
no scenery,
no author,
no program,
no actors,
no play. The Barometer Theater presents
My Head's in the Lowlands.
Everybody should love everybody. Can't you see those people with the sparks coming out of them? Confusion, confusion, confusion. What's it all about? Why do they torture me? Everybody should love everybody. Can't you see those people with the sparks coming out of them? That one over there with a neon nose?
Corn in Music, the new all-American opera based upon a beloved all-American folk song. Radio. We bring you the 4,386th episode of Lovely Mary, Please Get Up, We Have to Change the Sheets. When we last left Mary, you will remember that Ticonderoga asked her for her hand. But since her first husband was still lost in the offices of the OPM, Mary refused. As we meet her today, she is seated on the veranda. And we hear not her actual spoken words, but the thoughts in her mind. We're very sorry, but at the moment, apparently, she's not thinking. Yes, now she is.
Everybody should love everybody. Why do I sit? Why do I wait? Why do I sit? Why do I wait?
Why does she sit? Why does she wait? Why does she sit? Why does she wait? Why does she sit? Why does she wait?
No!
What happened? What? Tune in tomorrow. Please tune in. Please. 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 Corn in benefit shows.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight we bring you the greatest, the most stupendous, the most colossal, the most gargantuan, the greatest, the largest aggregation of stupendous stars ever to be assembled on one platform. First, I take great extreme pleasure in presenting to you the genius of the cinema, Mr. Swybark Zombie.
He isn't here. He's out on location.
Oh, well. And now I take terrific pride in bringing you a voice never heard on the air before. A lady who all America has been anxiously awaiting to hear the premiere radio appearance of Miss...
He stayed at home.
Oh, I see. And now I take great pleasure in bringing you...
He's got a cold in the head.
And now I take great pleasure in...
Old feet.
And now I take...
Not here.
And now I...
Now.
No one? Ladies and gentlemen, may I present, I hope, me?
Corn in Motion Pictures. Proudly, KO Pictures present a Wonder Boy production. Produced and directed by Wonder Boy. Photography by Wonder Boy. Sets by Wonder Boy. Costumes by Wonder Boy. Written by Wonder Boy. Rewritten by Wonder Boy. Typewritten by Wonder Boy. And starring...
Everybody should love everybody.
Yeah, I fooled you.
Well, Mr. President, that takes care of corn. I guess you know it already, but the lady was Miss Marlena Dietrich, and the men were Mr. Kay Kaiser and Mr. Tyrone Power. And now Miss Dietrich and Mr. Power are going to make another kind of a report, too.
Friends, there's a boy right around your own corner. He's a great little fellow. Maybe he's just like your own little boy or girl. He can't run like the other fellows. He says he doesn't want to play because he can't. Infantile paralysis is not a killer, but it reaches past the barriers of medical science with a clutching hand and twists and cripples. This boy was touched by that hand. He still has faith that the grown folks will be able to make him all right again someday. His is the faith of a child who lives in a nation where children are important. And in these times, above all else, our children must and will come first. Our line of defense is a healthy nation. Strong children make our nation strong.
And may I add this. Reach into your pockets and your purses and your billfolds and your checkbooks now. Yes, all of us know how many times that request has been made of you recently. But this is a plea for your child and the neighbor's child and the child around the corner. Get a birthday gift card from your local chairman and fill it with dimes and send it to the president at the White House. Or if you can't get a gift card, just put your dimes or dollars or whatever you can spare into an envelope and send it to our president at the White House. Do it now, tonight. Let him know that we are with him 130 million strong.
Thanks, Miss Dietrich and Mr. Power. Gosh, Mr. President, there are so many folks here who want to talk to you and so many more things to say. But I guess right about here, quick, I'd better give you a report on love. Oh, gosh, there's lots of it going on. They're sitting in the parlors and holding hands and listening to this, and they're parked in cars and holding hands and listening to this. And, gosh, they're even getting married. But I'd better let some grown folks give you a report on that.
Wedding, 1942.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered together here in the sight of God and in the face of this company.
Married. Me getting married. I don't like this. What's he talking so fast for? When he stops talking, I'll be married. Married. Me, Bill West, married. Guess I'm scared. All right, I'm scared. How do you like that? And you're standing next to me, but if you knew what I'm thinking, but you don't know what I'm thinking. Scared, yeah, and getting more scared every minute.
Lightly, but reverently, discreetly, advisedly, soberly, and in the fear of God.
Marriage is the happiest state. Marriage is the happiest state. Why does that keep running through my head? Marriage is the happiest state, and I'm getting married, and I should be happy. But I'm not. I'm afraid, Bill. I'm standing next to you, and I'm afraid. Are you afraid too, Bill? Should I stop the minister and ask you, are you afraid too, Bill? Are your knees shaking too, Bill? No. only me. I'm scared, Bill. Scared.
Together, otherwise, as God's word does allow, their marriage is not lawful.
Crazy. Everybody says a guy's crazy to get tied up in times like this. What's the matter with me? I'm cold and I'm sweating and I want to get out of here. Yeah, and out of here. You're standing next to me, but I want to get away from you, and I don't know why. You hear me? I don't know why. No, you can't hear me, because I'm not saying anything, just thinking. And what I'm thinking is all mixed up in my head. If I was much good at talking, and I guess I'm not even good for thinking. He's still talking. Talking, honor, obey. Why doesn't someone stop that guy talking until I can think things out? Why doesn't he stop talking?
Bestow upon these thy servants, if it be thy will, to give
He keeps on talking with every word. I'm more afraid, Bill, and I don't know why. I don't know why. Yes, I do. Because I want to be happy. And I won't be happy with you, Bill. No. They might take you away tomorrow, or next week, or the week after that. And it's bad enough to have someone you just love going away. But when you're married... Oh, Bill, he's got to stop talking. He can't marry me to you. I love you, but I don't want marriage, Bill. Not that kind of marriage. Not a marriage that waits for a knock on the door. This isn't the time for marriage, Bill. It isn't, and he's got to stop talking. He's got to. He's got to.
I am a minister of God, and I keep saying the words, but I don't think them. I said them so many times, they almost say themselves. How many times have I said them? This is 2004. 2004 have stood in front of me listening to me say the words, and yet somehow this pair is different. Don't know them, but they're different. Yes, the most important couple that ever stood in front of me. Why should I say that? I know why. Because they are the first I have married since the war started. The first. And so they are important. Yes, marriage now is more important than any other time in the history of the world. An evidence of faith in the future, a decent future of decent people. So these two and the children of them are the future. The world can blow its top off, but as long as they have faith and marry and have faith and have children, it'll be all right. Yes, all right. All right. It's no good standing here thinking. I've got to get out of here. It's better for you, Ann, if I do that. I've got it figured out now. I've got no right to get married to you now. Not now. Not in this cockeyed world. That's what's wrong with me. It's a cockeyed world. Not for you and me. Not for getting married. A couple of more minutes and I'm going to get out of here. Yeah? Better that way.
I'm not going to
better
stand
that
here
way.
any longer. Bill, I'm not going to marry you. I'm not. Oh, I love you, Bill, but not marriage. Not now. I've got to stop the minister. Faint. Yes. I'll faint and he won't have finished what he's saying, and we won't be man and wife, and that'll be all right. Bill, I'm going to stop this. Bill. In another minute.
Good marriage, yes. Good marriage. I may never see them again, but I'll remember them, these two, because they have faith and they've given me... No. Something is wrong. The girl's face, the boys, are they frightened? Why should they be frightened? They want to get married. They must want to. For their sake. No. For my sake. I found faith in them and they can't... But their eyes. I must hurry. Yes, hurry. Now. And I pronounce you man and wife. Well, my friends, didn't you hear me? Man and wife. Well, are you two just going to stand there the rest of your lives, just looking at each other? Mr. and Miss...
My darling, so am I.
Mr. James Cagney and Miss Marino Sullivan and Mr. Lou Merrill. Well, Mr. President, I guess that finishes my report on law and get it. Now I think I'd better tell you about speed. Yes, sir, everybody's doing everything fast these days. Making airplanes and tanks and guns and doing what they think is right. Why, gee, it's just been a few minutes since Mr. Power and Miss Dietrich told everybody how they should reach into their pocketbooks and bust open their dime banks and send you in the money. And already down in Wistful Vista, a couple of folks everybody knows are doing just that. Listen.
Hey, where'd you say my little pig bank was, Molly?
I have it, McGee.
Oh.
I was in a hurry when I went to the grocery store, so I took it along, and I shook 30 cents out of it for asparagus. Here it is.
Oh, thanks. Ah, so this is the little pig that went to market, eh?
Yep.
Welcome to Papa, Piggy. This is going to hurt you more than it is me. Hand me the tack hammer, Molly.
What you going to do, dearie?
Now, if you'll pardon my presumption, my pretty patootie, I'm going to pulverize this pottery porker and purloin a pile of pelf for the president's party.
Well, all right. Here's the hammer. Save enough bacon for breakfast, though.
Just tap a hole big enough to hit the jackpot, and maybe I can glue it back together again. Now, be brave, little piggy wiggy. Come on, now. Take it on the chin like a good little... Ow!
I thought it was going to hurt him more than it was you.
I'll swear the little beggar dodged. I was trying to be gentle, too.
Well, what for? Didn't you ever notice the stamp on his tummy?
Huh? Where? Oh, my gosh. Made in Japan.
Well, I was going to suggest that you break off his head, but it was too late.
I was going to bust off his tail, but it was twirly. Don't you get it, Molly? I said...
Ain't funny, McGee.
The pig liked it. In fact, it broke him up. Hey, look at the dough, will you? Must be $10 or $12.
Not if you count the phone slugs and the buttons and the poker chips.
Oh, and here's the Roosevelt campaign button. Wonder how long that's been in there.
On that theory, you get 3 guesses.
Well, you count the money, Molly, while I write a letter to send with it.
You can't send all that small change in a letter.
No, I'll write a check and keep the change. Hey, where's their pencil?
And you can't write the President of the United States in pencil.
I don't know why not. I voted for him in pencil. Seems more democratic to me anyway. I'll say Mr. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
President Franklin D. Roosevelt, not Mr.
Okay, President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Dear Chief.
And don't be so familiar.
Huh?
Dear Chief, indeed. He's not an Indian.
Well, his family's been here almost as long as the Indians. In fact, I think it was a Roosevelt that paid a few bucks for Manhattan.
That was Peter Stuyvesant.
Oh. Well, how's this then? Dear Mr. President, here's a hat full of dimes we're giving you priority on, and we wish you a happy birthday, and I'm sorry we can't afford to send more. And if you could see your way clear to speak to the local guy here about a new spare tire for our car.
McGee! Now listen, tear that up. You have no business putting that in a letter like this, and no business getting a new tire anyway.
Well, you're awful fussy. Hey, how many dimes were there in that bank?
$9.13.
Oh, swell. I'll write a check for, say, $35.
$35? Why, how can you? You've only got $6.85 left in your checking account.
Yeah, but look what I got here in my pocket. See?
Heavenly days, where'd you get all the folding money?
Oh, I and a couple other fellows formed a little combination.
What kind of a combination?
Well, you take 2 little cubical pieces of ivory, and if they make a combination of 4 and 3 or 6 and 5, you make some money.
McGee, you've been shooting craps again.
Mrs. McGee, I like to refer to it as Birmingham bingo. That's more refined.
Well, now you ought to be ashamed. Maybe they won't want money you won that way.
Oh, no. You trace the history of any dollar in the country back far enough, and no right-thinking person would touch it. Dough is dough, and they'll be glad to get it. Anyway, this game had government approval.
How do you figure that?
In fact, they told us to.
To what?
Keep them rolling.
I give up. Write your check and get it in the mail, and I don't like that letter. It's too facetious for a cause like this.
Oh, I suppose you could write a better one.
I can, and I did.
Huh?
And here it is. Dear Mr. President, enclosed is our small contribution to the wonderful work which is brought to a focus each year on your birthday. With it go our prayers that our nation and the world may soon be free of the disease that takes little children for its victims. And that a little change from a lot of big people will bring about a big change in the lives of a lot of little people. We know that to you such a wish is the same as saying happy birthday. Respectfully yours, Fibber McGee and Molly. Is that all right, dearie?
It sure is. Good night.
Good night, Al.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Fibber McGee and Mrs. Molly McGee and your writer, Mr. Don Quinn. Well, let me see what's left, Mr. President. I told you all about what we're laughing about, singing about, and swinging about, and thinking about. I guess the only thing left is to tell you what we're hoping about.
I am going to read you a letter. It's from my son. It reads, Dear Father, I started to date this letter December 6th.
And now I see it's half an hour after midnight, and I remember how meticulous you were about times and dates, so I changed the date line. It's a very warm night. One of many subtropical nights down here that have steamed away all memory of my good New England ancestry. Oh, please understand me. I'm not ashamed of the long generations of us who had to break ice from around the wells, but, oh, it's good to be warm and quite alive. And it's about being alive that I want to write you, Father. In your last letter, you made a wish for me. Do you recall? You said that you wished I could have in this, my 20th year, the life you knew when you were 20. And then you filled 5 solid pages with memories of that year. The glorious turn of the century, you called it. America, after long years of struggling, was sitting down to enjoy her new richness of soil and forest and mines, the accumulation of all the hard work of all her little people. And men like you built their homes and raised their families and put their money in the banks, and life outside was bright and glistening. Men wrote about when knighthood was in flower and sang of daisy bells and read of David Harum and applauded actors playing Beau Brummel and Monte Cristo and Ben-Hur and Florodora. The glorious 1900s, yes. And America was rich and growing richer, and everything would always be that way, for we indeed were quite the wisest, and there was no world but our world. And there were 2 broad oceans all around us, and life was good and safe, everlastingly safe. And that's why you wanted to give me your old world, Father. To give me safety. But now I must tell you I don't want it. For in that safety was a decay that grew and grew. A rottenness of men who thought security could be bought with strong beams in their houses and thick vaults in their banks. Who talked of Christ yet who applauded evil when it grew powerful. Who thought that the world of their family was more important than the world of men. That safety, Father? No. Not at the price of a world where men grow fat and children hungry. Not a world where every 50 years they blast and bomb and burn your churches. Where power feeds itself on persecution, where deviltry of self stands upon the throats of all the little people. I don't want that world. This is my world, and this is my day. For now, at last, men fight. And know that they're fighting against the miseries you forgot were in your world. Good and evil, clearer than ever before in the history of man, stand facing each other across the blood and tears. Yes, this is my day, Father. Our day, our fight. I may die today, tomorrow, very soon, perhaps, but I'll be fighting for my world. And even dead, it will be my world. A world of people living in the peace that will come. Must come. The peace of all the brotherhood of men together at last in common decency. In simple justice.
So ends the letter from the man who was my son. Dated December 7th, Pearl Harbor.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott Lewis. And thank you, Art Chobler, for the words, and Merrick Wilson for the...
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the early morning news of the world, and before we start our roundup of world capitals, here in the New York newsroom, we have the latest reports on fighting in the Pacific Theater. Now, the first round of the battle for the Dutch East Indies may not be over yet, but so far the Allied nations are way ahead. Upwards of 30 Japanese ships so far have been sunk or damaged in the great running sea and air fight in Makassar Strait between Borneo and Celebes. American and Dutch forces between them are believed to have accounted for close to 25,000 Japanese soldiers, gone down with their transport ships. The latest success is the torpedoing of a Japanese aircraft carrier announced by the Navy Department last night. The big ship is believed to have sunk after the attack by an American submarine. The Australian Air Force, employing the same tactics as the Americans and the Dutch, struck at the Japanese invasion fleet in the Bismarck Islands during the night, and a Melbourne communique says that 3 Jap ships were damaged in Rabaul Harbor. Now, Tokyo today claims the Japanese troops in Malaya are within 30 miles of Singapore, but there is no British confirmation for that. Remember, that's a Tokyo claim. Now, there's no indication yet of where the British line is now that Batu Pahat has been lost, but on the west, at least, the front is less than 60 miles from Singapore. In Burma, according to a Rangoon communique, there's no change in the situation. And it isn't quite clear from that whether General Headquarters at Rangoon means that British troops still are withdrawing toward Mulmine or whether they've braced their lines. The American volunteer flyers in Burma have smashed another Japanese attempt to attack Rangoon from the air. In the latest clash, they shot down 3 and maybe 4 Japanese planes. The exact toll of Japanese losses in the Battle of Makassar is most difficult to compute because communiques from various sources overlap. But Washington has announced that American naval forces have accounted for at least 8 and possibly 10 Japanese transports. American flying Fortress bombers sank another transport and set fire to 1. And then there's the aircraft carrier, which makes at least 13 ships sunk, or probably sunk, by American forces. Now, the Dutch have blasted as many or more. Now, here's a late bulletin from Batavia. The Japanese are believed to have extended their landings in southwest Celebes. The Netherlands High Command says the invaders apparently have occupied their points in the Kendari region of that island. In the Southern Hemisphere, the Pan American Conference at Rio de Janeiro closes today, with every indication of being the most important in the history of inter-hemispheric relations. A final plenary session is scheduled to give formal approval to 39 resolutions designed to cleanse the entire hemisphere of Axis influences. Adoption of the resolutions is regarded as, well, just only a formality. But one century-old problem still threatens to sound a discordant note at the otherwise harmonious finale. It's the border dispute between Ecuador and Peru. Now, Ecuador may bring up the argument at the conference today, unless Peru previously accepts a formula for settling the controversy. In Montevideo, an authoritative source discloses that Uruguay's diplomatic delegations in Berlin and in Rome have closed their offices. Now, the staffs will leave soon for Lisbon, preparatory to sailing for home. Uruguay is one of the 17 American nations that have broken diplomatic relations with the Axis. The diplomatic break, in addition to an economic break, has been recommended by the conference. Uruguay also is supporting anti-Axis financial moves by requiring exchange permits on all remittances to foreign countries except Great Britain and the United States. The United States delegation to the conference regards the financial measure as, well, perhaps the strongest of the entire conference. The head of the American delegation, Under Secretary of State Sumner Welles, says that he's eminently satisfied with the outcome of the conference. Broadcasting to the United States last night, Welles said the conference has more than accomplished its purpose, and said Welles, the unity of the Western Hemisphere has been preserved. From Moscow, the Red Armies are driving westward for further victories this morning. But Soviet communiques reveal no details except to say that a number of additional villages have been taken and that German losses are heavy. Word from unofficial sources is that Reserve, that's just 140 miles northwest of the Kremlin, is expected to fall any minute, and that other Russian troops are pressing forward at Veliki Luki, only 80 miles from the border of Soviet Latvia. The Soviet communique concludes with news of 2 more enemy transports sunk in the Barents Sea. Next comes news from that great democracy across the Atlantic. Go ahead, London.
This is Robert St. John in London. Scrappy, round-faced Winston Churchill reported to his nation today. On the stroke of noon, the Prime Minister began a serious, hour-and-a-half fighting speech in Parliament. By his own wish, that speech started off a 3-day debate on the whole conduct of the war. And also by his own wish, the debate will be climaxed by a vote of whether or not Parliament wishes the Churchill government to continue in office. A vote of confidence or no confidence. There is no doubt here in London about what will happen when it's all over, when all the serious and petty complaints and criticisms have been aired. There is no doubt but that Parliament will tell the world it does have confidence in Winston Churchill. Churchill himself insisted on a really free debate and a really honest vote. He insisted on this demonstration of British democracy so that, as he put it, the whole world may know where we stand. He even urged his critics not to be mealy-mouthed in their speeches. Before actually reviewing the war, Churchill was several times a bit whimsical, tossing out occasional light banter, occasional jibes at his critics. Once, for example, he chided those who have lighter burdens to carry than some of the rest of us. Once, when he referred to the flight of Rudolf Hess to Britain, a member interrupted him to ask, "Where is Hess now?" Without an instant's hesitation, Churchill snapped back, "Where he ought to be." The high point of the Churchill speech was his announcement that a joint Pacific Council has been established, a council on which Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and Holland will be represented, and that Australia, New Zealand, and Canada have been granted representation in the War Cabinet. He called on Britain not to allow itself to become rattled by events in the Far East. He refused to predict how long the Pacific War will last, but he frankly said it will be attended by heavy punishment. He doubted that the Japs will attempt an invasion of Australia. He pledged himself to do all in his power to aid Australia and to persuade America to do likewise. Churchill told dramatically how when he left Washington, Roosevelt gripped his hand tightly and said, "We will fight this thing through to the bitter end, whatever the cost may be." Churchill referred to American troop landings in Northern Ireland and said a considerable force will follow. And he also gave Hitler something to think about when he said American fighters and bombers will defend this island and will attack Germany. As the Prime Minister got into a serious review of the war, I looked over at a tall, thin man in the balcony near me, and I noticed that he bent forward, cocking an ear and drinking in every word Churchill was saying. That man was American Ambassador John G. Wynant. A lot of other people were listening just as intently. Not a single seat on the floor of Parliament appeared to be vacant. They were there from all over, from Scotland, from Northern Ireland, from Wales, from all over England, there to hear Winston Churchill tell of his trip to America, his leadership at the Empire's most crucial hour, and his opinion of how the war is going. Often, Churchill was interrupted by little rumbles of approval, by shouts of "Hear, hear." Churchill paid tribute to his and our Russian allies. He disclosed that Britain has sent Stalin exactly what Stalin asked for in the way of raw material. At the moment, there is only a slight lag due to the weather, but Churchill said this lag will be overcome next month. Then he turned to Libya. He told how when the winter battle began down there, the British had 45,000 troops against an Axis army twice that size. But, said Churchill, 2/3 of those men of Hitler and men of Mussolini have been killed, wounded, or captured. The British loss has only been 18,000. Churchill was grim when he told Parliament how this battle has tested our men. He said the desert fight has proved that men cannot only die for king and country, everyone knew that, but that they can also kill. He admitted that Rommel is a daring, skillful opponent. He admitted that a grave new battle now rages. But he said he never hazards a prediction about the outcome of a battle while it still is in progress. And now this is Robert St. John returning you to New York.
Now for a report on events here in the United States, as given by Earl Godwin from the newsroom in Washington.
And good morning, folks. What I have to say comes right along behind Robert St. John because it's a part of the big effort. Your Uncle Sam and his pal John Bull get right down to cases now and pile up everything they have, all their resources, all of their ingenuity, all of their ships, all of their factories, all of their stuff, and promise to use it commonly in the common defense against this very common enemy. That's the meaning of the White House announcement, which was released this morning, about 3 joint war boards and so forth. The White House announced that the new boards will handle separate phases of a plan to knit still more closely the gigantic efforts of the United Nations. One of the new groups will control shipping, another will control raw materials, and the third possibly the most important, will direct the disposition of munitions. All possible information between this country and England will be exchanged under the plan, and though only Britons and Americans will actually be board members, it is believed and said they will confer often with representatives of the other United Nations. It is expected these board members will be appointed shortly. I think that would give you a better picture if you just envisioned a common storeroom to which these boards will go to take the stuff that is needed here, there, and everywhere, and just use them against the onslaught without resort to as much red tape and conferring as there has been. Meantime, Washington hears rather loud, short, and sharp cries from down under, where the Australians and the Dutch are telling us, in effect, to hurry up and get busy, or else. That seems to mean that the Aussies and the East Indian Dutch want the United States and Britain to help in a terrific and possibly a reckless offensive against the Japanese, who are coming right down the line regardless. They are stopped for a brief time by successful naval engagements against them in the Straits, but no one believes the Japs will stop there. And incidentally, that remark of St. John's that the British government does not believe that the Japanese will invade or attempt to invade Australia is the first we have heard of it here, because here in this country or in this city, I haven't heard anybody say that the Japanese would not invade Australia. In fact, we have thought they would if they could. The President signs that bill, by the way, to extend the retirement system, and that includes congressmen who must contribute a slice of their wages, same as everyone else. And the House finally agrees to what it looks to me to be a rather ragged version of the price control bill. The Senate may take it up and finish the thing today. I haven't found anybody who gives the way this bill is written 100% endorsement, but it provides a vast and severe price control authority, including authority to control rents in defense areas. And it gives the price administrator the power and authority to license you to do business. And if you don't conform to the government price regulations, out you go on your ear. But the price controller, of course, must get the court to do that. Also, you're permitted to go to court and sue anybody who overcharges you, and you may get 3 times the overcharge back. Sugar rationing this morning stands at about 12 ounces a week per person when they actually get down to rationing. The Dias Committee is in a mood to say, "I told you so," and will reveal to Congress all it had on the Japanese espionage organization on the West Coast, which Dias says he was urged to keep under cover, while the executive branch of the government tried to smooth over the Japanese situation. That was within the last 2 years. And a heavy concentration of Japanese merchants here were organized into a front for Japanese spy work, and Dias says that he has all the information and intends to put it into a booklet and lay it before Congress in about 2 weeks. That's all from Washington at this time.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the latest news of the world. Now, you've heard our reporter, Robert St. John, in London, Earl Godwin in Washington, and this is John Fraser speaking from New York. For the latest news, keep tuned to this station. This is the Blue Network.